Hello, I'm Dr. Mikey Mewborn, and this is Church Ministry. It's so good to be with you today. Today, the topic is the organizer. And what we're going to do is we're going to discuss some things called org charts. Throughout this lesson, we'll see where people fit in the lineup, whether they're a senior pastor, whether they're executive pastor, maybe they're a staff member such as a student pastor or a worship pastor. These type of people in the church play such a vital role, but they must know who they report to. They also must know who's under them. And if they don't know those types of things, it'll be very difficult for there to be great communication with an organization. Now, that's a church, but also we'll see org charts for just organizations or corporations. And you can see how things are run or should be run when you look at somebody that's in the presidential spot or a VP, or maybe there's some kind of support staff, administrator or director. And we're going to look at those today and see what are the best practices for being an organizer. It's good to be with you. Let's begin. Welcome to Church Ministry. Today we're looking at the topic, the organizer. We're using outline notes from Kenneth Gainwell once again. Let's go ahead and jump into our study. As we talk about the topic of the organizer, there are some main principles that we have to discuss as well. Number one, the organizer should never be viewed as an end in itself, meaning that position should never be the end to itself. There is always more that the organizer is going to bring to the table. There's going to be more things that happen out of it. Should always grow out of need. So this means this position is growing out of a need for somebody to bring this organization into play. Should contain maximal participation. So this person is involved in a lot of the different elements of organization or administration in general. Should be flexible. Definitely, this person should be flexible. As we looked in the last lesson, we talked about mental flexibility with the administrator. Well, this is important as well because the organizer, he should be or she should be very flexible in the way that things are done. Sometimes things don't always go your way, or there's an emergency and things have to change. You have to shift roles. And if that's the case, we don't need to shut down the program. We need to see who can best fit those new roles. And so that's a very important principle for the organizer. Also, number 5 should be participatory in procedure. So as things are happening, there needs to be that participation that's actually there. Another principle is number 6, about organization should include job analysis. So the organization should have that. Number 7, should emphasize use of records and reports. So as one of the principles of organization, it's important that there is a good use of what we already know or what the company already knows and reports about that. And then it should include clear channels of communication, oral and written. Sometimes organizations fall apart because the communication is not as strong. Have you ever heard an organization it be said, oh, that's their job. That's not our job. That's their job. Well, they may not know it's their job. And because of that, sometimes things will fall through the cracks. And if things fall through the cracks, then people are upset. And before you know it, they'll stop investing into or in your company. Or if you are a school, like a seminary or a college, they might stop going to school there. They can find another school to attend. So it has to be great channels of communication. Now, under the idea of the organizer, know the importance of time. That's important. Know your time limits. Know how you have things laid out. How long will it take to do them? So create realistic goals. How long will this take for us to get it up and running? Will it take 1 month? Will it take 2 months? Will it take 6 months? Or will it take a year to actually get this where we want it? And so you're going to have to be realistic about goals. Know your gifts. It's going to take somebody with the gift of administration a lot less time to accomplish something in administration than somebody that has another gift or organization. So you have to know where people are gifted, and for the organizer, he or she must know how they're gifted and surround themselves with people that don't have those gifts. Also, evaluate your current schedules. Know where people are. Know what they're doing. Know your own schedule. Make sure that you're making the most of your day. Eliminate junk email or junk mail in general. You don't want to put things in your life that clutter it up or bog it down or distract you from what you're supposed to be doing. A lot of times when I'm checking emails or working through some things that I know are very important and I can't find an email, a lot of times it's because I have so many other emails, and a lot of those, it could be junk email, it could just be email like some kind of spam or something that comes in, whatever you want to call that. And it's scary because you might miss something, it might fall through the cracks. So we need to streamline, and we need to eliminate the things that keep us or take us off of our focus. I think there's time for change for some people because they need to start changing these areas up. As we continue on, identify priorities, know what's important, know what you need to focus on, delegate when possible. So the old phrase has been for many years, you need to work yourself out of a job. Well, that's not necessarily accurate. What you're trying to do is say, I'm taking care of these things, and if I spend time doing this other thing, then it'll take away from me doing what I need to be doing. So you delegate those types of things. Even the apostles taught us about this in Acts chapter 6. They said our time should be devoted to prayer and the teaching of the Word of God, not to doing some other things. And so they delegated those types of things to other people. Practice self-discipline. Kind of putting boundaries in your life, saying, I'm going to focus on this, I'm not going to go down these roads. And it takes discipline to do that. And whether you're going to start using a day timer or you're going to start setting up programs that are going to help you, it's going to take discipline to do those types of things. Centralize your calendars. Put everything kind of on one main calendar. That helps you to see what's going on. And so a lot of people do that. A great calendar that is used by many people is called Office 365, and it allows corporations to just have their calendar, and not only can you know what's going on and be able to sync that up with any calendars that you might have, as well as your email accounts, but it'll also let other people know if you're busy at that time and to reschedule an appointment at another date. Design work schedule. So set it up. Know what you're going to do each day. Know how you have it planned out. Know what you're going to do, because if you don't plan it out, it'll never happen. Some people say it this way: if you don't, or if you fail to plan, you plan to fail. That's kind of the idea there. And don't waste research. Use what you've already done. Now, I've heard this used for pastors before, and I think it's very appropriate in any line of work. Let's say, for instance, a person that is a teacher or a preacher, they study for a message, a sermon. And what they'll do is they'll study for that sermon, and they'll preach that sermon one time, and then they never use that material ever again. And what our author has said is, along with other people, they said, take that research that you've used and use it in other ways. Maybe it's part of a book that you're writing, or maybe it's part of a podcast, or maybe you want to put something on a blog and use that research for those types of things. In other words, get more mileage out of what you've done because you've put the time in. So use it wisely. Now, informal organization is kind of an interesting topic to talk about, and we're gonna look at that here at this time. Think out the following questions: how are decisions made? How are people hired? How are funds distributed to various projects? How does information spread throughout the organization? So think about those things. Who does this? How do they do it? What's the effects of all of that type of thing? And if you can answer these questions, it'll help you in understanding the organization, because there's an informal side of organization that is very important to the culture and knowing what each organization is about. Kind of in that same line, informal organization is not defined with most org charts. In some cases, the directors or assistants know more than the vice president or even the president himself or herself. Think about that for a moment. Sometimes the assistant to the president knows more about what's going on in the organization than the president does. You know, it's amazing when you think about these types of things. This form of organization is not wrong or distorted. It is crucial for certain organizations to thrive. So what we have to understand is that there is an informal aspect to this. Now, who is the top person? Well, it'd be the president. But if the assistant knows more, then the assistant can make decisions based on what he or she knows the president's going to do. And so those are some things that can be made. And what the assistant can do is just inform the president on things that happened or what took place, or can deal with the minutia that sometimes goes on in organizations. Really neat when you think about informal organization. There is a book that I've seen and haven't read through this book, but I think that this is kind of the idea I'm talking about. Leading up, how to lead your boss so that you both can win. The phrase leading up has been around for decades. It's been around for a long time. And it's this idea that I lead up, meaning that I'm bringing ideas to the table. I'm setting up a platform to success for my boss or for my supervisor or the person who is heading up the organization. I'm setting them up for success. In the same way I'm setting up people under me for success, I'm helping those above me. And so there's some things involved in informal organization that are just as vital to more of a formal traditional model of organization. Let me show you an org chart here to kind of help you see what's going on. You see the president who's above everybody. You see the 4 vice presidents underneath. And then underneath those vice presidents, you see supervisors, maybe directors. You have people, executives that are working in certain areas. And so you see this, but they all come under. So that's a good org chart to know who's where. All right, I want to show you this org chart. This is of a church. And in this org chart, it's kind of unique. It's got an elder board who's at the top, and these people are the ones who make a lot of the crucial decisions, maybe who the senior pastor is that comes in, the executive pastor, and then maybe the different team leaders or ministers over these different areas. And you see there that the elder board's on top, and then you see the senior pastor to the left, to the top and left, and then you see the executive pastor on the right. And so these people have different areas that they pour into. Now, if you see there, the senior pastor, of course, is the person who is working with the elder board, the executive pastor, and overseeing a lot of the worship, the focus on worship and what that's all about, because he's involved in that, heavily involved in that. But the executive pastor is the person who is more involved in the day-to-day operations of the church. And you see all types of organizations or types of areas of service. You see worship and next gen, connections, care and enrichment, missions, outreach, operations, and then those kind of break down. And so you see all of this, and that comes under the executive pastor for the most part. Now, I wanted you to see that because that's not the way every church is set up, the org charts, but a lot of times when an elder board is involved, this is what that chart will look like. And so I wanted to give you an example of that one. Now, as we continue on, we're looking at some main principles again. Job control means having a level of confidence to maintain and manage a major leadership position while maintaining a positive or happy working attitude. So job control, as defined in our textbook, is very unique. It teaches you how vital it is, or it's dealing with the aspect and the importance of how vital it is to maintain and manage a major leadership position, and you need to do it with a certain type of attitude. You also must have the adequate time to do the job. So it can't be you can't be given a job, or you can't give a job, yet you're not giving the people ample time to complete it within their time frame, and that's just a no-no. So you have to have adequate time. You must have an adequate staff that's needed for that job. You must have adequate resources. If you don't have what you need, if you need a certain kind of computer and you don't have one, it's going to be very hard to do your job. You must have adequate equipment. So whatever that looks like, you got to have the right people, the right job, whatever it takes so that you can do well. And if you don't have these things and you're in this role, you need to ask about that and get that worked out. Okay, I want to look at this very quickly. The 10 Commandments of Good Organization, written by Olin Hendricks. Now, there's been different versions of the 10 Commandments for a good organization, but these are a lot of those, just maybe revised somewhat. Definite and clear-cut responsibilities should be assigned to each person or position. We might know today what our job is, but the situation might change so that tomorrow we do not know. We need adequate supervision so that we can rediscover what our job is when it has evolved. Responsibility should always be coupled with corresponding authority. Number 3, no change should be made in the scope of responsibilities of a position without a definite understanding to the effect on the part of all persons concerned. Very, very important. Number 4, rather lengthy here. It says, no executive or employee occupying a single position in the organization should be subject to orders from more than one source. That's important. You can't have more than one boss. Doesn't make any sense, and you have conflicting ideas coming out. Every person should have only one boss. Where it is necessary for one person to have 2 or 3 positions, there should not only be a clear understanding as to who gives orders with respect to which work and the time allocation for these positions. Otherwise, the individual is going to be torn, and subordinates may well be frustrated because they take orders from so many people. Number 5, orders should never be given to subordinates over the head of a responsible executive. The manager tells the supervisor what a certain subordinate under the supervisor should do. The manager does not go directly to the subordinate. Criticisms of subordinates should be made privately. In no case should a subordinate be criticized in the presence of executives or employees of equal or lower rank. No dispute or difference between executive or employee as to authority or responsibility should be considered too trivial for prompt and careful attention. Promotions, wage state changes, and disciplinary action should always be approved by the executive immediately superior to the one directly responsible. Number 9, no executive or employee should ever be required or expected to be at the same time an assistant to and critic of another. And number 10, executives whose work is subject to regular inspection should, whenever practicable, be given the assistance and facilities necessary to enable them to maintain an independent check of the quality of their own work. The truth is that we are harder on ourselves than our superiors would be. Executives should be given the opportunity to report to you so that there can be not only your appraisal of their work, but also their appraisals of their work, both coming from the same standard. I think these 10 commandments are really helpful for people because they help us to see what is expected and what needs to happen and what are best practices. All right, well, that has been church ministry with the topic, the organizer. Hope you've enjoyed the lesson today. God bless you. Have a great day. All right, I hope you've enjoyed this lesson on the organizer. It's been so good to be with you today. These factors and these thoughts that we look at and what it takes to have a great organization are so vital to all of us, and hopefully you learn some ways of doing it a little bit better today. Anyways, good to be with you. Continue on with your studies, and God bless you. Bye-bye.